Hey, what's up, faithful viewer? Welcome to day 2, hour 1 of the Nebulous creation series. First things first, I wound up posting my intro video on a Unity Facebook group with 100,000 members, and I had someone who was disappointed in the quality of the first video, so I'm taking the liberty real quick to show exactly what they had to say here. The person's name is Robin Hool, and they said, "Why is it you think people want to watch this? I feel like you put zero effort into making this human ingestible." Well, I suppose that's true to some extent. I am just recording this using OBS. There's no production value. I'm not using a script. It's all off the hip. I'm designing, developing, at some points even arting a game completely real time for this. I haven't bothered to make any production value for this video. And there's plenty of other content creators who also don't really have much production value in their videos. A lot of them do, but it's not absolutely necessary. So a little bit more that she winds up saying here. It took 5 full minutes to get into you talking about the core concept of the game. That should have taken less than the first 15 seconds. The whole video should be 10 to 15 minutes total. That's your opinion. It's your opinion how long the video should be. It's your opinion how long it should take to talk about whatever I'm talking about. I discussed a lot in the intro video. I basically poured the whole game out. The whole game idea is in the intro. It wasn't scripted, it was off the cuff, so there's points where I kind of forgot things here and there, but I need to restipulate that the point of this series isn't to be entertaining, it's for enlightenment. This is for journaling the entire development process of this game, which means the ultimate goal of this entire series is to complete the game. Nothing else matters to me. It doesn't matter how entertained you are by the game. It doesn't matter how entertained you are by the series. It doesn't matter how much fun you have watching these videos. They aren't for that. These videos are for people who are interested in the live development and seeing the struggle it is to make games. For people who are interested in seeing some rubber meeting the road in terms of Unity development. And apparently now it's a little bit for seeing people get very upset that I'm not taking even more time to make this game by irrelevantly making my production value in my videos extremely entertaining. I mean, for all the talk of production value, if I go back to my other videos, like, I put production value into these videos and there's like nobody watched them anyway. So the production value wasn't even really worth it. So someone was upset about that, and I can see kind of where they're coming from because it's very true. And they go into it a little bit more here even. They say, I get a little bit more halfway through and I have to stop. Okay. If you don't have any art to show, which I very clearly stipulated that it's a prototype game, there's not going to be much art. I'm on purpose not doing art in order to get the mechanics in line first. Instead of showing a black screen with 2 white orbs in it for 20 minutes of your video, that's not very nice. They're obviously not just white orbs. They are representative of celestial bodies in a solar system. But okay, if you're going to reduce it to that, so be it. Pay a couple bucks for stock images that convey the feeling you're trying to achieve. Well, how are those stock images going to help compared to actual 3D objects that are interactable in the game? I also don't have any money, so it's not like I can do that. If you take a moment to breathe and try to remember what you were going to say, and say you forgot what you were going to say, all that can be cut out. No, it actually can't exactly, because I only have, well, I guess I could use like a Veed software, but I am not really sure why this person is so upset about this, to be completely honest with you. And there was a point where I forgot what I was going to say, but I got through a lot of stuff without a script. So, okay, I forgot something. It happens. And I'm not doing any extra work to spruce these videos up. That's not what they are. They're just raw recordings of the pure effort it takes. I'm not cutting mistakes. I'm not like resequencing parts where I have to pause. It's not about that. It is about the authentic process from start to finish of getting everything done and what that looks like. It's not about hemming and hawing the end result. I'm not bothering with that. I already have enough things to do to complete this game. I'm not adding extra things onto the pile just because you're so offended that I'm not bothering to do that. I guess it's a little disappointing to read this. Written a script? No, I'm not doing that because it's going off the cuff. To anyone unfortunate enough to attempt to sit through your videos, well, I'm very sorry that the video bothers you so much. I'm very sorry. Games are entertainment. Well, that's true. If you can't make a freaking video entertaining, how the heck did you get it in your head that you might be able to make a video game that's entertaining? Ouch. Ouch. Darn. You know, if you had watched the whole video, maybe you would have understood the potential in Nebulous and how the mechanics can make the game extremely unique and interesting. And it is a little toxic and insulting. So, but I'm not offended, I'm just more annoyed. But it's probably something I just have to get used to doing this content. So I'll be pretty honest, and I will admit that I put a reply in, and I just said I'm not going to be lectured by you. I'm automatically non-responsive to anything you have to say. Your ignorance is pouring through your wordings. And I don't know if this person actually makes games or not, but like they're lecturing me on like the prototypity of making a complicated game, and they're telling me to just this or that, or how come you're not putting in more effort to make the videos more interesting, or this or that, or whatever. It's all about this person more than it's about what the series is actually about, which is helping me to complete this game. So I responded a little, I guess you'd argue maybe just a little negative, maybe just a little, but I'm willing to stand my ground on this. I know why I'm doing this, and I know I am doing it like this. So if somebody gets this bent out of shape about it, I'm going to speak my piece on it, and I'm not just going to let them dictate the narrative of what I'm trying to accomplish here. So that's basically all I wanted to discuss before I actually got into the day 2, hour 1, third hour of this particular series. I suppose what I can take to heart a little bit from that is that, and it's already something I've been addressing, is I understand that the entertainment value of these videos isn't maximal. You know, this isn't Mr. Beast. This isn't PewDiePie on these videos. I get it. And because I have no notoriety, it's not like anybody's super invested in just listening to what I have to say. So I understand that for, as she put it, ingestibility, there are a few things I could do, but the bottom line is that I'm going to be focusing on completing the game. It's not going to be, I'm not going to sacrifice efficiency of game production for like that quote-unquote ingestibility of the videos. I've watched videos like, for instance, Casey Muratori's Handmade Hero. He's got hundreds of videos, and the entertainment value in that comes from the fact that I'm an interested game developer in what he has to say. If you aren't interested in game development or learning how to like do low-level C coding or understanding like how to interface your game with an operating system from the ground up, you're probably not going to find that entertaining. Like, it is perspective to a certain extent. So, but just beware that I am going to address people who make comments like that on my videos. And I'll take to heart some of the stuff that they're mentioning, but I'm also going to call them out for the kind of the bullcrap that's coming from their side at the same time. Alright, so now that I've clarified that, I'm going to jump back into setting this game up. I've got a little bit more energy than where I left off. I was really losing it when I was trying to sort out how to actually make these scanning values add up properly. So now that I have the energy for it, I'm going to get back to it and see what I can pull off here. So this is a little bit of live design because I'm considering on the spot how I want the system to work. The system could just like add 1 for every extra degree of angle, extra degree of frequency, and extra meter of radius or whatever, but my idea is to utilize like actual mathematical area. So I'm going to jump in here real quick, and I can't remember. Let me see. Area of a circle. I think it's like 2 pi radius. Okay, so it's pi radius squared. So I actually need to come in here and say pi. It is just 2 pi then. I mean, it's essentially the same value here if I just say value.new value. It's the same thing as squaring it, times pi. And I will make sure that this is ordered properly. And I will, if I divide it by scanning angle, this is where I was at yesterday a little bit. I'm actually going to grab my notepad real fast here and kind of think about it on paper. So like, okay, so if the radius is 1, and you have a 360-degree circle, then you've got 2 times, or pi radius squared, so like 3.14 times the radius of 1 squared, which is 1, so it's just the area total is like 3.14-ish. And that would be, assuming if I multiply it by like a frequency of whatever 1 is, you essentially have a cost of 3.14 to do a 1 radius maximal scan. And the idea is that anytime you, like if you want to chop the degree down to half and you just want to do a half scan for whatever reason, you would have 3.14 divided by essentially 50% of 360, or to be more accurate, what you've got is 180 divided by 360, because that's, you're taking half of the angle, which is just effectively 1/2, so 0.5. So you're dividing it by 2 in that instance. So you actually want the max angle divided by the chosen angle by the player. And then you're looking at 2 there. So you're looking at 3.14 divided by 2. So you kind of be able to argue that the cost is like 1.67, basically. Or that's not correct, 1.57, roughly. And then you can argue that if you want to like triple the frequency, you can then multiply that by 3, so you're looking at a cost of like 4.71-ish. Okay, so yeah, I think this can work pretty good because it's based off real math. So there is like an intuitive aspect to it where the player is, it makes sense that the cost is tied to the area of the actual mathematical area of a circle. So they can understand why increasing their range and radius together creates a much larger effect over time. So it's something that the player can have a semblance of sense with. And on top of that, if you're just doing a straight multiplication for frequency, you're just assuming that you're pumping more power in. The only thing really left then would be like, there's some little fiddle farting to do with like maximum range. Oh, you know what? I forgot something here. I forgot to activate my timer, so I'm just going to keep an eye on the timer here. Let's see, I'm at 59 minus 14, so we're looking at 49. We're just at like 45 minutes here. Okay. My bad, I forgot one thing. All right. So if we are, I mean, at this point, probably I can get away with making it work like this and leave it in the prototypical realm. I wouldn't have to fine-tune it right now, where I'm worrying about, like, the main thing I'm worrying about would be increasing the frequency by 1 how much that costs. It would kind of depend. It might make more sense to like increase it by like 1/10, because essentially what's going to happen is the farther away and smaller a thing is, there needs to be like a higher frequency to actually scan down that thing properly. So essentially, if it's linear where the player can go between like frequency 1 to 5, then it's not that much of a cost difference to scan down something that's smaller. The main difference in cost really is like the distance and the angle. So just making it increasable by 1 to like unlock the next tier doesn't make sense. So effectively, I think the frequency range I had in mind was like maybe from like 1 to 100. And the idea is that the frequency would, if you go up to 100, maybe you only increase the cost by like 10 or something, as opposed to increasing it by 100. That is something I am not so sure on. So I think for now, what I'm going to do is the angle and the radius make sense. The frequency, I can just keep it really simple and make it a linear scaling. And in the future, if I need to add, I can add like a damper or something if I need to, or I can tweak how the math works. So I think that is actually good enough for this. So if we are looking at pi radius squared, and then you have to divide it by max angle chosen angle, which in this instance you could, instead of requiring both of those angles, you could in fact say like 3.14 times 180 divided by 360. So you can actually just divide chosen by max and multiply it. You can effectively just do that. So let me see here. Now that I'm done doodling, and the person who left the comment, they might be disappointed that I didn't open up like Inkscape or something and draw that out on the screen, but you know, like, I'm a little bit better at drawing with a pen than I am with the mouse. So I'll have to consider it for next time. Okay. So the scanning radius is determined by the input, and that gets squared and pied to determine the cost of the area, but the area can get divided by whatever the scanning angle is. So essentially, I can just come in here and say times, and then say the scanning angle value divided by, and I can just say 360. And this will effectively diminish the total cost of the scan by dividing out what slice of the radius is actually chosen. And then once that's done, we can just multiply it by the scanning frequency value. And that will give that will change the frequency linear. It'll just linearly change the cost based off the frequency. So if you want to have a scan that's 5 times as powerful, regardless of the area, it'll just cost 5 times as much. So that's simple enough to consider. And it looks like it's disappointed in using these parentheses. I'm going to remove them. And that's how you calculate the total cost of the scan anytime the radius changes, the scanning angle changes, or the scanning frequency changes. So therefore, that is the same at every... It's not exactly the same, but the pattern is the same, so I'm going to actually paste them in here, and then I've got to tweak the pattern by saying in this instance, instead of, oh, actually this is a good point here. So in this instance, we actually have to make sure that we set the scanning radius value. Oh, I guess the scanning radius value is just the value.new value. And we do that to, oh no, I guess it doesn't matter because, okay, yes it does. Okay, so in here we have to tweak the value.new value to be scanning radius value. And I guess we need to do it in here also. Okay, so that's going to properly adjust for the area. And then the scanning angle changes. So in this instance, we would have to say that the value.new value is in fact the value we're dividing by. And then down here we've got the scanning frequency has changed, so we have to use the new value for that too. And while we're at it, let me see here. Okay. So we also have to change the, or we have to assign the scanning angle's new value for the global use. Same thing down here. We are going to say scanning frequency value equals value.new value. Whoops. So this is going to, at any change in the player's decision, it's going to, or anytime the player chooses to change their active scanning values, it will update everything properly, is the idea. Okay, so once this is done, what was I on track with yesterday? I was trying to get to the point where, upon calculating the new cost of the scan, it was going to activate or deactivate the button responsiveness if the player can afford the new scan value. So I essentially have to come in here and say something like if total cost of scan is, oh, actually the way I was imagining it was, it would, the idea was that it would clear the, or, okay, so I remember now. The idea is that the player data would update the displayed economy by removing the total cost of the scan. So in this instance, we're going to have to reference the UI document, which let me double check here if the, does UI document have active scanning elements? It does. So I can just reference the UI document directly. And I'm already doing that here anyway. So we've already queried for the active scanning elements. We need to query for label, which is the economy tally. Pretty sure I named it this as well. Gotta double check because there's no autocomplete for the string. Okay, good. Economy tally. So we're taking the economy tally. Oops, it's not economy tally. So economy tally. And basically what we were doing is anytime the total cost of scan changes, which is anytime we change the value in here, we have to go into the player data, grab the economy total, and subtract total cost of scan. And if this is greater than 0, then we need to okay, so if I set the total I don't want to change the underlying economy, so like I kind of need a placeholder economy value, which I suppose I could do with a float placeholder economy tally. And we're going to assign the placeholder economy tally in the event player data.total economy minus total cost of scan is greater than 0. Then what? Placeholder economy tally equals total economy minus total cost of scan. The issue with this, however, is that this placeholder economy tally isn't going to update every time it's not going to update every time So essentially what I'm imagining now is we would need to put placeholder economy tally in player data. That way, the iterating the economy will iterate the placeholder. Otherwise, we would have to like subtract from the player data's. We would have to subtract from the raw economy value. And I don't want to do that because if there are instances where the game has to, or if the game is spending resources over time in real time, taking it out of the scan doesn't make sense. So I suppose what I'm trying to do here is like I'm trying to mask it, but I'm trying to also need the mask to be plugged into like the iterator. And the only way I'm really thinking to do that is I've got to add a placeholder economy tally to the player data. So it seems to be what I need to do. So let me jump in here. And I'm just going to add a new float. Whoops. Public float placeholder total economy. And then I can yank it out of this. And so player data dot placeholder total economy equals the total economy minus the total cost of the scan. Which means then what we have to do is like, oh. And essentially we can just change the, I guess it makes sense here, we can just take the economy tally and I think it's set text, or text equals, and then you just say player data dot placeholder total economy, and then you have to turn it into a string. And if you do this, the economy tally will it will display the it will display where the economy would be if they went through with the scan. Which means I have to go to player data and I more or less have to come in here and iterate the placeholder as well, basically. Yeah, that's kind of lame though. I'm doing the same thing here. I'm just grabbing the economy and I'm updating it. Okay, I'm just going to do it. If I do it like this, it solves other problems later, where I don't have to... I can display a potential economic value without actually having to change the underlying economy. Which gives other instances where it can update other things in real time. I think it makes some sense, even though it feels a little redundant. So I got the player data, I've already got all the parts here anyway. So essentially, let's see, I'm changing actually am setting it to, in this instance I'm resetting the placeholder. Therefore, if the placeholder gets set here, the placeholder still needs to iterate based off of the tick that's gained here. So I guess essentially we come here and just say player data dot placeholder economy total economy plus equals gain per tick. But then we're working with a total economy that... Okay, so now we're getting into conditionalizing which one to use. Which I suppose that could essentially change this to say displayed total economy. And we would want to switch this here to also say that. And then our update is actually just the displayed economy here. Okay, so that doesn't mess with the underlying value, and it allows for proper display of the masked value. So now we gotta come back here and revert these. Therefore, it will update anytime the value is changed, and it will update anytime the economy is iterated on. So spending and gaining both will actually change the mask properly, without necessarily messing up the underlying value, which makes sense. Okay, so the easy thing would be to take the total economy minus the cost of the scan and just run with that, and have the mask be a negative value. For prototyping, that would be pretty straightforward. I always feel like adding a little bit of complexity, though, unfortunately. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but the idea is that if they don't have enough economy, we would deactivate the button. So if they have enough we would basically have to come in here and we're going to have to do another query up here for the button. So we have to say button, and we'll say activate active scan equals root q query for a button, and the button was, wasn't it like, I think it was just called like launch scan, so I wound up naming it. Okay, good. So launch scan. So we'd come down here, and in this event we can do the scan, so we can say activate active scan dot set enabled, and we would set it to true. Therefore, the button can be pressed. And I'm starting to consider the fact that if the button gets deactivated and the economy iterates, the button could come back on. So we're gonna have to go back into, it's almost like we're gonna have to cross-reference this or something. Okay, so I'm going to do an else if here. So if the economy minus total cost of scan is less than, oh wait a minute, that's actually a good point. So if it's greater than or equal to 0, it'll work. If it's less than 0, then this needs to get set to false. We don't want to push the button. The displayed total economy just winds up getting set to 0. And then the economy tally.text equals player data displayed total economy to string. So this will activate the button. And I'm sorry I'm explaining it, but I'm not actually explaining things. I actually am thinking through how I want to proceed. I'm simply vocalizing the thoughts I would have anyway, so I hope it doesn't come off like explaining, because I don't know everything I'm going to do. I've got to decide what I'm doing as I'm going along here, and vocalizing through it is possibly can get misconstrued as explanation, but I'm not doing it for explanation's sake. I am actually just vocalizing the steps I'm going to take. So in this instance, this is all good. If we change the scanning radius, it will calculate the cost, and if the cost is affordable, the button will activate. If the cost is too much, the button will deactivate. The issue now is that if on the next tick the economy becomes affordable for the scan, the button needs to reactivate. And for that, we could put it in the iterate player economy, because every iteration it has to check if the button can reactivate, essentially. But to do that, it would have to like I mean, it almost has to like recalculate the total cost. Okay, so the idea that just came to mind is I've got to actually add a new float in here. So public float total cost of active scan. And this is just because I now have to plug this data into another spot. So here, instead of using total cost of scan as a float, I need to come down here and say player data dot total cost of active scan. Then I need to come up here and, oops. Not sure what that's all about. Oh, I already have the player data, so I don't have to declare that again. So now the player data stores the total cost of whatever the active scan is. And essentially, we will come in here and if the economy gains a tick, it has to check if total economy minus, oh, whoops. So it needs to check if the total cost of the scan tanks the economy. So if player data dot total economy minus the player data's total cost of the active scan is greater than or equal to 0, we can effectively set the button to active. The button no longer has to be inactive. So we wind up having to come up here and we have to cache a button. So button, and this is launch scan button. Come down here, we have to do our typical querying for the proper element, whoops, which is called launch scan. And then we have to set launch scan, the launch scan element. We have to enable it. Whoops. It's true. Okay. And I think that's enough to set it up to where the I think that's basically going to work. So let's just give it a shot here. Okay, so enter play mode. The economy is still ticking. If I go down here, okay, so that's a little lame. It didn't start off properly because it was like outside of the thing, but so I might have to do like, in the long run we might have to do a detect mouse as in window at start or something, but if we just ignore that little part of it, then we can't make any changes because we don't have an active selection that can scan. We built this last time. However, if we do select something that can scan, it activates, and we in fact can change these values. And the bottom two aren't set up, but the top one is set up. So if I bump up the radius here, oh, it's not. It's not changing the total cost. Oh, I think I must have forgotten to link something in the... Okay, I forgot to link the player data. Jeez. I do that like all the time. Okay. So now, once again, to play mode. I don't have a detective mouse's started in screen, so I'll just click it. And man, it's bizarre how that works. So if I have to select something first. That's weird. So what I might have to do is set it up to be disabled by default, which I think isn't a bad idea. Let me see if I can find that. It's false. It is false by default. So essentially, what I would need to do is like deactivate the element That's on start. So let's see here. Okay, so the whole UI on start. Basically, I can just come down here and say main UI dot. This isn't going to exactly work either because I don't want to grab the whole entire UI. Instead, I just want to grab the scanning UI. So active scanning elements. And essentially default it to not enabled. And I think this will actually fix this problem, since it's requiring a selection from the get-go. It's quite tedious, I understand, but that's what it takes to make games that people aren't going to complain about because they're not fun enough and stuff. Otherwise, they'll complain about every little thing they can put their finger on. Okay, so that's properly working. So if we select the sun, it's still properly working. And finally, if we select the planet, that's where things change. Okay, so now that the data is set up, the idea would be that increasing the radius will increase the cost. The problem with that is that there's no angle, so the cost will be 0 no matter what. But we're seeing that there's... So it doesn't matter what radius they put it at. Therefore, we are just going to have to plug in the code to these other spots. Which I think is effectively this. So let's copy paste these in here. And I know copy paste is not academically conventional, but over the years, just through my own experience and from listening to the experience of some wiser developers, like the structural approach has its merits. So even though it's not academically accurate, sometimes copy pasting is strategically proper because you aren't creating, you're not creating like a whole structure to just do the same code, which actually winds up with more code in more places to like make modifications. So sometimes copy pasting is actually not a bad idea, even though it goes against convention to a certain extent. So it's just something I picked up recently. So you have to excuse me if you're very irked by me copy pasting blocks of code, but it has its place. Alright, so now I have to really see if this thing's going to work or not. So everything's plugged in. If I enter play mode and I select scannable, and then I increase the frequency to like, you know, whatever, to something small, and increase the area to something small, I should get a total cost of scan value calculated here, and I do get one. Ah, but it's turning into floating point. And it's actually not working properly. It's not... Oh, it is subtracting it. Okay, so I increase the area. Okay, so it is working to a point. So if I maximize it, okay, good. So this is actually technically working. If I go up to 0, if I maximize it, it's stuck unscannable, but it shows my leftover economy. And this is why I was getting so picky about doing the math exactly right, because, like, the player has to have a pretty good idea of what's going on. And in this instance, the floating points are going to... I don't feel like that's going to be good. So... this is kind of an interesting problem. It also shows where, like, the frequency can... I mean, technically it's all working, though. It's calculating the cost, and it's properly activating or deactivating the button. Actually reminds me, let's see, if I max it out real quick here, and then I, like, click the sun, what happens? So in this instance, it should actually... I would actually want it to clear the active scan. Basically. I'd want it to, like, revert all the values down. And then I'm also under the impression that I want a... To be completely honest, I just kind of want this to be like trunked to an integer. So I wonder if I can just cast this as an int. However, this doesn't exactly yield feedback for, whatever. There's eventually the cost is going to be so high that, like, you're not going to be spending mere floating points on a scan. So let me see if this worked properly by casting it to an integer. There might be a way to string formatter it or something different. So okay, it's still floating pointing. That's because the total cost is not. Or wait a minute, hold on. Okay, so it didn't cast properly. So let's try the other thing where we, like, just format it or something. I'm not actually familiar with doing it like that. So the displayed total economy, and I made it a floating point. If I just want it to be an integer, I might as well just make it an integer. Oh, so now we're getting into some design philosophy where, do I want the economy to tick as a float, or do I just want it to tick as an integer? And I kind of just want it to tick as an integer. Alright, so then it would be easier to just leave this as a float and possibly learn how to do the formatting. I was under the impression I could just cast it to an int, though I guess not. I wonder if there's like a float dot trunk or something. Nope. Oh, there's a part. That's not gonna work. Alright, so I guess I'm just gonna have to do the format. I don't know how to do a two-string format in C#. Hold on. C# string formatting. Okay, instead let's try this. So C sharp, remove decimals from string, sure. Okay, so it says I can say C0 here. Okay, for now I'm just going to try this C0 thing. So it just says to go like this. And let's just see if this works. For like 2 characters. That might just solve the problem. The other thing I was thinking was, if the scan is too high, we could maybe turn the number red or something, maybe. Or we could also do it where, if we don't have the economy to support the scan, we can no longer increase the value. Oh crap, it's showing money. That's not what I was looking for. Yeah, I'm not sure about the super specifics of that. Yeah, I'm just not familiar with the little codes. Man, it should just like, I mean, honestly, it should, as I was saying, I should be able to just do like integers here, but I should be able to grab this as an int and then turn it into a string is what I should be able to do. Which I already tried that though. Like I should be able to just go like this, int string. I should be able to go like this, but for some reason it is not casting it. Let me try one more time here. The video's at, yep, 59:30, so I'll give this a quick shot. I already tried this though, I don't think it's gonna work. It's probably just not gonna work. So if this doesn't work, I'm going to have to come back and study the string formatter to sort this out. So if I select this and I jack up the scanning power, it's, because that time I went to 4. So for, okay, that's really bizarre. For a split second, it's like putting out the wrong value. So that's kind of weird. Okay. I'm gonna have to come back and figure that out. Alright, so this has been hour 3 of Nebulous development. I am moving on the right track to get these scanning values updating properly. I'm still running into little kinks here and there with super specifics on how the game looks, which is not exactly what you're supposed to do as a prototyper, but I do want to complete this game, so I'm taking a little bit of time to get some specifics sorted out here and there. So thank you for watching the video up to this point, and I'll see you in the next one.